And Stevie just started to fly after that. And I think that's where he started to see his true value. So Sylvia Moy, I don't think she gets enough credit, God rest her soul, for what she was able to do in terms of getting Stevie to be Stevie. Going on, everybody? You're right on time for another ride on the Groove Line with your host, Chris Stevens. Hopefully, you all are doing well out there. Today is Wednesday, and of course, it is Wednesday, May 13th. And what happened on May 13th, 1950? Stevie Wonder was born. So, yes, this is day 3 of our week of Wonder, and today, celebrating Stevie's 76th birthday, we're going to talk about the beginning of his career at Motown, the Little Stevie years, as they're better known, because there's 3 stages of Stevie, in my opinion. There's Little Stevie, there's the classic period, and then there's just Stevie Wonder as the statesman of the ambassador of black music. And there are, 3 parts in there. So Little Stevie's career really gets off on an interesting note because he's discovered by a friend of a friend who was Ronnie White of the Miracles. And of course, the Miracles had a songwriter, lead singer, and vice president in Motown named William Smokey Robinson Jr. So Ronnie brings Stevie to Barry Gordy's attention, and there wasn't Barry was kind of lukewarm on him at first because of a blind 11-year-old, who needs a preteen Ray Charles. But then the harmonica won Barry over, said, okay, let's see what he can do. And you know, outside of fingertips, really, Stevie got off to a slow start because his voice was still in the process of changing. I think that's the thing that a lot of child stars face, not just musicians. When your looks and your appearance and your voice and your body changes, and people aren't used to seeing you in grown up sort of roles or grown up sort of stanzas. And Stevie, he was in trouble, to be quite honest, when his voice changed. Because when you look at the temperature of Motown in the mid 60s, you got the Supremes on the roll, you got the Temps on the roll. Marvin Gaye is starting to find his footing as he's doing duets with Kim Weston and eventually Tammy Terrell. There's a lot going on here. There are some people that flew under the radar. I mean, at one time, Motown had the Isley Brothers and Gladys Knight and the Pips and Parliament. Yes. Well, they were the Parliament at the time. They did I Want to Testify on Motown, but that was the extent of their Motown involvement. But yes, at one point in time, Motown had the Pips and Gladys, had the Isley Brothers in the early stages of Parliament Funkadelic on the shelf at Motown. So Stevie was in a little bit of a world of hurt until a lady by the name of Sylvia Moy, who was a songwriter extraordinaire at Motown, said, let me work with him. Let me see what we can put together here. And she started giving him things like Uptight, Hey Love, a version of Tony Bennett's For Once in My Life, and then you get to the My Cherie Amour years. And Stevie just started to fly after that. And I think that's where he started to see his true value. So Sylvia Moy, I don't think she gets enough credit, God rest her soul, for what she was able to do in terms of getting Stevie to be Stevie. I mean, because when you're a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid and people are so excited about fingertips, like you can ask any boomer, black boomer will say. Well, you can probably ask some white ones too, because white people listen to Motown, so I'm not going to leave them out. But for argument's sake, you ask any black boomer, that's anybody born between 1946 and we'll say 56, 57-ish, and you hear them, you ask them about fingertips by Stevie, and they're like, wow, yeah, I remember when I first heard that, because that was a live recording. A lot of people don't know that was a live recording. And it was at a theater in Chicago. I can't remember the name of the theater in Chicago. It's gonna kick my behind. So any of you OGs in there in the comments, please let me know what theater in Chicago that was. I mean, I wanted to say the Howard Theater, but the Howard Theater was in DC, so it couldn't have been DC. But it was a theater in Chicago, and this little 11, 12-year-old kid comes out, boundless energy, gets the crowd doing a little call and response thing with him. And you can even hear the musicians in the background yelling, what key, what key? Because he's modulating the song as he goes. Like, preteens aren't supposed to do that kind of stuff. Blind preteens at that. I mean, I think that's what makes Stevie so incredible outside the fact that he was a naturally gifted musician anyway, but the fact that he didn't have the gift of sight. I mean, it's him and Ray Charles when we talk about musicians with obstructed vision, to be quite honest with you. I mean, yeah, Jose Feliciano, let me not forget him. I mean, I think even Clarence Carter, is Clarence Carter blind too? I think Clarence Carter, yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of visually impaired musicians who are legends, but Stevie's story is just like unbelievable. I mean, when you look at Ray Charles, I mean, Ray Charles, he lost his mom young. He ended up drifting into the world of music as a 15-year-old orphan. And but Stevie, his mom got them out of poverty in Saginaw, Michigan, because her husband and Stevie's stepfather was not exactly on the up and up. So they moved to Detroit to sort of start a new life. And Stevie got himself into the music thing, and it just took off from there. And you can't, as much as I'm one of those people that felt like the Motown sound got repetitive after a while, it's quite obvious you can't tell the story of black music or music in America, period, without the original Motown sound. Not going to sit here and take anything away from what Barry Gordy was able to accomplish, even though when you read the behind the scenes stuff, like for instance, Ika Kendrick, who is Eddie Kendrick's daughter, she has an Instagram account where she's sharing all of the contracts that Eddie signed. And looking at those contracts, Barry Gordy was getting over on quite a lot of people. So that's why people were within the Motown machine were secretly cheering Stevie and Marvin Gaye on when it came to artist rights. I mean, because Marvin had an in, literally had an in, because he was married to Barry Gordy's sister Anna. So if Marvin said I don't want to do nothing, or if I want to do this my way, Barry Gordy had to okay it. Stevie was a different story, because Stevie was the I guess the pet project, as it were. And then you get a kid who is providing for his family, but they put the money in the trust, and the money that is in the trust is nowhere comparable to what he bought into Motown. So when you're 19, 20, 21 years old and you're trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with the rest of my career? And you say, okay, I'm just going to, drop, drop it on the table and say, look, you need me. I am the best, I don't think was Stevie the most talented in Motown time? Yeah, okay, we'll just say it. I mean, Marvin, for all his shenanigans, he could play drums, he could play piano, he could write songs, but I don't think anybody at Motown had the potential for superstardom that Stevie Wonder did. And yes, I'm including Diana Ross in that. Yes, Diana Ross was one of the great pop singers of all time. And yeah, I mean, Motown had they had just brought the Jacksons in at the tail end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s. So Stevie still felt like, I don't know, I wouldn't say the redhead stepchild by any stretch of the imagination, but he knew his value. And he'd even tried to do some things, independently. There's an album that is very interesting from 1968 called Evit's Red Now. Yes, that's the name of the album, Evit's Red Now. And the way Motown pitched it is what is Stevie Wonder spelled backwards? And yes, that is Stevie Wonder spelled backwards. Evit's Red Now. And it's not very poppy. I mean, it's an experimental album, is what it is. It's 18-year-old Stevie getting a chance to produce and do music the way he wanted to do it for the very first time. And it's not gonna wow you, it's not gonna knock your socks off, but it's gonna give you clues to what Stevie wanted to do as he got older. And I think a lot of people missed out on that album just because it was so eccentric and off the beaten path. I mean, it wasn't anything that Motown was putting. I mean, hello, in 68, Marvin Gaye's version, I Heard It Through the Grapevine. There you go. You compare that to anything that was on Eve, It's Red Now, and it's like, okay, all right, sure. I mean, you had Cloud Nine by the Temptations. I mean, 68 was a damn good year for Motown, by the way. One of their best. But I just don't think that what Stevie was trying to accomplish with If It's Red Now was something that was meant to be, a pop hit. It was basically him saying, I don't need a group of writers and producers to do my work for me. I can do this. Sylvia Moy put the confidence in me to do it. Now it's up to you whether you let me do it. And then of course, you get to Signed, Sealed, and Delivered, and he starts to, have more of a say in it. but it wasn't a complete set. And that's where I'm coming from comes in. I already talked about that album. I did a whole episode on that. I'll put the link to that, on the closing page if you want to check that out. But honestly, there's a lot about Stevie's early catalog that you can like. I mean, Uptight, Everything Is All Right, Out of Sight, love that song. Like it's one of those songs that you can't not be happy listening to. Because I mean, when you hear it, I mean, even when you hear it in like, something like Why Do Fools Fall in Love? Because there's Frankie Lyman and Elmira Eagle working in the garden and that song is playing, and it's like Frankie Lyman is at this point in time not a musician anymore. I mean, he's cooked. I mean, he's been out of the game for a while. He would end up passing away a little while later after that, because of a drug overdose. But you hear that song, them, in the garden, baby, everything is all right, uptight, out of sight. Like this is one of those things that for the late 60s, because again, the late 60s one of the most tumultuous times in the history of the world, especially for black people, because they had just Lyndon Johnson had okayed the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. White people weren't happy about it, so they went right back to the violence that they had briefly taken a break from, and I do mean briefly. And black people, we were working towards upward mobility, but we still had to fight off the Klan. We still had to fight off, you know, people who still to this day think black people don't deserve a place in the world. And you needed music, you needed upbeat stuff to do things like that for you. And Uptight, Out of Sight by Stevie is just like one of those songs that you look at 1966, 1967 in that scope, and it's like, okay, all right, my clothes aren't new, but my baby still loves me anyway. She doesn't care about any of that. I'm from the other side of the tracks. She's from the good side of the tracks. But when we cross the tracks, our love is all right. So that's a Stevie song from that era that I highly, enjoy. There was another song called "Cool, Calm, and Keep Yourself Together" that I remember Bomani Jones used to play on the Morning Jones radio show as a bumper, and that was one of the Stevie songs that kind of escaped my early scope of research back when I was really getting serious about this music thing in my late 20s. But yeah, that song is up there. My Sherry or More, of course, you can't tell the story. I mean, it's another one of those songs that the Quiet Storm gave a new life to, because there was no Quiet Storm in 1969. But by the time you get to 76 with Melvin Lindsay in DC, Tony Brown in Philly, Lawrence Tanner in Los Angeles, WBLS, I think Frankie Crocker was the first Quiet Storm DJ they had because he did everything. So you get to these spaces now where love music is starting to be played regularly. And yes, we are doing a whole Stevie Love episode that's going to be for Thursday. And you look at that and you look at what Stevie was able to accomplish, with his catalog as Little Stevie earning new life. And it just made people understand that this was a very special guy, a very special, he might have been visually impaired, but his musicianship, his talent was undeniable. And Barry Gordy eventually had to say, all right, man, let me get this dude everything he wants because I cannot lose him. Like, even Stevie, he chafed against the system. Marvin Gaye chafed against the system and eventually left Motown in the early 80s. So Stevie just had a way of being able to stick with Motown in a way that others didn't, because the Temptations even left after a while. And then, of course, as we all know, Gladys Knight and the Pips left for Buddha. Isley Brothers restarted T-Neck Records. Parliament Funkadelic ended up going with Westbound, and God, that's a whole conundrum in itself. But Stevie was the he was the glue. He was the glue that held Motown together through the tough times of the 70s. Because when you look at the 70s, you have Stax Records, even though Stax went down in a heap by 1976. Philadelphia International was starting to, really pop at that point in time. And Motown had some struggles because you had Joe Jackson, who was tired of his boys, being ordered around. You had Stevie, who was threatening to leave. You had Marvin, who just was incredibly talented, but also incredibly unstable. You had the Supremes breaking up and Berry Gordy pushing all his chips to the table behind Diana Ross, which wasn't a bad decision. It wasn't a bad decision. But a lot of the Motown stuff, and a lot of artists from the 60s who had their heyday struggled in the 70s. Motown didn't get a second win until Rick James came along in 1978 with Come Get It. But Stevie was the one that really kept the lights on at Motown. But that's the classic period Stevie. And yes, we're doing a classic period episode on Friday. That's how we're closing it out. But early Stevie, you love the excitedness in his voice. You love the enthusiasm with which he performs. And those early records, while they don't compare to what he was able to do when he, won creative control, they still give you an insight to how Stevie has viewed music and the world basically his entire life. Like, this is a dude who knew that he was living in a crappy world, but he knew that if he could give people things to look forward to, give himself something to look forward to, then life ain't that bad. And that's pretty much what the Little Stevie era is like. When you think about Fingertips, when you think about Hey Love, when you think about Uptight, My Sherry Amore, Sign Seal Deliver, even the Christmas music. I mean, we've done the Christmas songs on here, what Christmas means to me, and all of that good stuff. So Stevie from 1962 to 1970 is still one of the most important artists of his generation. I mean, of course, 71 and thereafter, he became Stevie Wonder. But Little Stevie still occupies a very important space in the history of music because younger artists could see what was possible if they had the right backing. And yeah, while Motown was kind of heavy-handed, with the charm school stuff and you know the money issue, they still had a machine that couldn't be beat, and everybody knew that. So Stevie got a chance to understand how this machine worked up front and realized that, well, I could kind of do this on a smaller level, but if I have control over my music is going to be heard anyway because, hello, I'm that damn good. And that's what he was able to do. So, what are your favorite Little Stevie songs? I already told you mine, but what are your favorite Little Stevie songs? Let me know what you think in the comments. That's going to do it for day 3 of the Week of Wonder here on the Groove Line. Greatly appreciate y'all as always. Contact information will be in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe, tap that notification bell so you're notified of all the new videos that drop on this channel. And don't forget to like and comment on the videos because, as you know by now, your boy talks back in the comments. Thursday, it's going to be all about love. It's going to be about Stevie the Balladeer. We're going to talk about Stevie the Balladeer. And Friday, we're going to do our countdown. We're going to rank the 5 classic era Stevie Wonder albums in order, 1 through 5. Yep. You want to tune in for that one. So thank you guys for riding with me on the Groove Line. And until the next time we ride, may you find the groove or may the groove find you.